Exercises in evaluating expressions. Your calculator can help you evaluate algebraic expressions in a number of different ways. I'd like to take a look at a couple of those as we work through these four examples that we have here. In example 1, we're asked to evaluate the algebraic expression 4x plus 3 for x equal to negative 5. That means we want to take the value negative 5 and put it in place of x within the expression, and then use our order of operations rules to figure out what that expression value is. So on the calculator, we'll start with the 4 in 4x plus 3. And then often the easiest way to substitute is to use parentheses. So we'll open up a left parenthesis, and then we'll choose negative, and make sure you use the negative key, not the minus key, 5. And then we'll use a right parenthesis. And notice that we didn't use any symbol here for multiplication, the same as there's none written in the actual expression. The calculator understands assumed multiplication when you have a number in front of parentheses. We'll finish the expression with plus and 3. And then we'll press enter. And the calculator will come back and tell us that the expression is equivalent to negative 17. Now another way to do this is to use the variables that are available in the calculator. We can start with the negative 5. So we press negative and 5. And then we can use the store key down here on the lower left side of the screen, STO, and that gives us this arrow. We want to take negative 5 and store it into the variable x, the same as we see here in the example. So there's two different ways to get the x. One is to press the alpha key and then the store key, which has above it the letter x in the same color as your alpha key is. Or for x, we have a shortcut key, and that's right next to the alpha key is the x, t, theta, and n key. I'm going to use that key. So we take negative 5 and store it into x. I'll press enter. And it just repeats the negative 5. What we can do now is we can type in the expression exactly as we see it here in the example. So I can type in 4, and then I'll use that x, t, theta, n key again to get the x, and then plus 3, and then we press enter. The calculator now sees x as the value negative 5, and it tells us that 4x plus 3 is negative 17. We just did that in 2 lines. We could actually make that even a little bit quicker and do it in a single line by taking and typing in negative 5 and storing that to x again. Then what we're going to do is we're going to press the alpha key and the decimal key at the very bottom of the calculator. And what that's going to do is bring up a colon, and you can use a colon to separate different commands for the calculator on the same line. So that's our first command. Our second command is the expression 4x plus 3. And we'll press enter. And then in this one command, negative 5 will be stored to the variable x, and then the calculator will evaluate the expression 4x plus 3 for that value negative 5, giving us back once again negative 17. In our second example, which you can see here, we're asked to evaluate 4x plus 3 plus, 4x plus 3y minus 7xy for x equal 4 and y equal negative 7. So, there we go. So we need to enter 4 in for x and negative 7 in for y. We could either do this using parentheses and do it all numerically, or we can enter the 4 and store it into the variable x on the calculator and store negative 7 into the variable y on the calculator. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to use the shortcut method all here at once so we can see how we could do this whole question in a single line. So I'm going to start with 4 because that's the value I want to store to x. And I'm going to press store, and I'm going to press X, and then I'm going to press the alpha key and the decimal key to get the colon up. So that's the first thing I need to do, is take 4 and store it into X. The second thing I need to do is take negative 7, and make sure you're using the negative key and not the minus key. Store that to Y. And in this case, we're going to get the Y by pressing alpha and 1. You'll see above that Y, the letter Y, in the same color as the alpha key. And then we need to put in another command separator, so we'll press alpha and the decimal key. And now we can finally give it the expression. So we can type in 4x plus 3, and we need to use the alpha y. So we're going to press alpha and 1 to get the y up. And then in this case, we actually need to use the minus key on the right-hand side of the calculator, 7. And that's going to be multiplied by x and y. And then if we press enter, the calculator is going to store 4 into the variable x, negative 7 into the variable y, and then it's going to evaluate the expression that we've given it using those numbers. So I'll press enter, and I'll find out that the expression is equal to 191 under those two substitutions. In example 3, we have a little bit more complex expression to deal with. Here we have a quadratic expression, negative 2x squared plus 3x minus 7. And the value we want to put into there for x is 2 minus the square root of 5 divided by 3. Now, this can be a difficult value to put in multiple places for x within an expression. So this is where this method of storing a variable value, into a variable first, and then just simply typing the expression as we see it here, can really help us eliminate errors and make things a little bit easier for us. I'm going to do this in 2 steps. So let's start by storing this value, 2 minus the square root of 5 divided by 3, into x. Now we need to make sure under order of operations that the subtraction in the numerator is done before the division. So we're going to put the numerator in parentheses. So I'm going to begin with a left parenthesis, and then the number 2, and then we'll use the minus key here, we're subtracting. And to get the subtraction, to get a square root symbol, we press the second key and the x squared key down the left-hand side here. You'll see the square root symbol above it. And you'll see the square root symbol comes with a parenthesis automatically. All we need to put in there is the 5, so we can close the parenthesis. This first one is just for closing the square root. Then we'll close the second parenthesis to encompass or hold the entire numerator. Finally, we can put in divided by 3. And that's the value we have. We need to store that, so we'll use the store key on the lower left-hand side to x. And now I'll press enter. And what we'll get back is the decimal version of that expression we've just put in there. So this is a rounded version. The calculator has rounded it to the number of decimal places you see here. The calculator actually is maintaining more decimal places in this, so this is all it's going to show us, as opposed to the exact expression that we have in the example. So now we can take and type in the expression that we have. So our expression is negative 2x, and then we need to raise this to a power. We can either use the caret key on the right-hand side and the power 2, or for squares, we have a shortcut key on the left-hand side. We can just simply press this x squared key, and that's what I'm going to do. So I have negative 2x squared. I'm going to add 3x to it, and then we're going to subtract 7. And I'll press enter, and we'll get the value negative 7.2484519998. If we rounded that to 3 decimal places, as the example requests, that would be negative 7.248. All right, let's look at our last example here, example 4. Here we have a complex rational expression, x squared minus 5 in the numerator, x plus 17 halves in the denominator, and we want to find out what this expression is equal to given x equal to 13/6, and we also want an exact answer. So we'll begin as we did in the previous example, and we'll store the value, in this case 13/6, into the variable x. So I'll take 13, and we'll divide that by 6, and we'll store that to the variable x. And when I press enter, the calculator will show me the decimal equivalent of that, 2.16, and those 6's repeat forever. The calculator is just rounding the last digit to a 7, but those are really an infinite number of 6's out there. All right, now we need to type in the expression. So to make sure that order of operations is obeyed, in the fraction bar that represents division is the last thing that's done. We put the numerator in parentheses and we'll put the denominator in parentheses. So I'm going to open a left parenthesis and press x squared minus 5, and I'll close that set of parentheses. Then I'll press divide, that represents the large fraction bar. Open a left parenthesis, and now we'll put in the denominator of x plus 17 divided by 2. I'll close the right parenthesis, and there's the expression exactly as we see it on the sheet. I will press the enter key, and the calculator will evaluate that for 13/6. And let's see, we get back negative 0.0286458, and then it looks like we might start getting a repeating 3. But this is the decimal answer, and it's probably been rounded when we see this many decimal places to the very last value. The problem asks us to give an exact answer, so we'll try to convert this to a fraction. If we press the math key and choose option 1, which converts decimals to fractions, and then press enter, we'll take that last answer and attempt to convert it to a fraction. In this case, it is successful, and we find out that the exact answer is negative 11 over 384.